We have another question up here. Go ahead.
Actually, two. One's for Emma, and I just wondered how she got hooked up with Simon, and was he already planning his trip, or did you instigate it? And the other one is, David, whether or not there's an American Indian shaman musician that's somewhat like we found in South Korea, and has that one ever been celebrated here?
Okay. Hello? Oh, that's right. When the idea for this film came about, I was already looking for a subject through which to explore how I felt about music and my own travels with music. So I was looking for a story that could encapsulate that. And I used to work with Simon many years before, and then we'd both gone off on our own travels for 7 or 8 years. Well, most of his were going to Korea back and forth trying to find the shaman. I wasn't even aware of that. And then we were both doing an album in Hong Kong for somebody else, and he had just flown in from Korea. And I said, what were you doing there? And he said, oh, looking for a shaman. And so naturally the exotic road movie, it sort of ticked all the boxes, and I knew if they met a 30-something jazz musician and an 80-something shaman who didn't speak the same language, disparate walks of life, that could really illustrate how music can bring people together. And then, he played, and I hadn't heard him for a long time, and he'd always been a very wonderful technician. And he'd suddenly turned into this incredible fluid drummer with a really unique vocabulary, basically. So I thought it would be great to really explore how it had changed him and that whole process and the philosophy behind those who are called to music as a vocation. So that's how it started. Yeah. Over to you.
I could answer the second. Thank you. That was beautiful. And I think we should all thank Emma for making such an extraordinary film and us having a pleasure to see it.
We have time for one more question.
Well, I have a half a question for Emma. And my question is, David just brought this up, but this idea that the shaman was being protected by his, where the elders were being kept away from others. When you were making this movie, did you get a sense that Don Juan was waiting to see if Simon was really ready to see Kim Suk-jo?
Thanks. Yes, when we arrived, actually when Simon first sent an email to Don Juan saying he had heard that maybe he knew the shaman's family and he was really interested in meeting him, Don Juan sent him endless emails and lists of questions that were all sort of like tests. And I guess eventually Simon passed the first level because he said, literally what I put in the film, he said, the process has begun, let us go with the wind. So I thought that was beautifully enigmatic start to the journey, but then it continued because we arrived and he actually didn't really speak to us for the first 2 days, and he was teaching at a sort of camp for teachers from all over the country, music teachers, and he spoke to us but wouldn't let us in the rooms. He kind of wouldn't let us pull out the camera, he wouldn't let us do anything, and we were starting to think, was it a mistake? And then one night he basically got us drunk with everybody else, and we had to perform for him and me as well, and for everybody. And after that, we were welcomed in. So it was sort of these series of tests. And then, of course, we didn't know the shaman, or Kim Suk-chul was in hospital, and he saved that piece of information until we'd actually met another shaman, and he saw how we'd gone there. And every step of the way felt like this sort of rite of passage until the moment which we didn't really know what was coming, but then once it all happened, we all sort of went, it was like this little destiny path. So.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Can we do the question, or you want? Because I feel this gentleman's been waiting for a second.
Yeah. Well, two things. I want to ask Emma something, and I just have to say for David first that I've never really encountered like standing in front of the sun or a volcano or something. You're just awesome in every single way. I don't know quite where you get all this energy from, this eloquence and brilliance, really. It's extraordinary. It's like you're a living embodiment of what the film was depicting. So I want to thank you very, very much. You're so inspiring. Emma, I couldn't help but, well, first of all, be very awed by your film and see the images of Korea, almost like a parallel story. You had captured like the philosophy and what they were talking about with the music and the spirituality of it. It seemed like you had captured it visually in some of these shots that just, to me, were visual presentations of this kind of spirituality. I wondered how you were allowed into some of these very private and sacred places, and whether or not there was any sort of rehearsal, whether it was just roll the film, it was just spontaneous, whether your presence or your film crew's presence you felt in any way inhibited anybody that was there. And I don't know, you just inspired me also beyond belief, so I don't know what else to say.
Thank you for those kind words. I didn't really have a crew, it was just me. So, and well, at one point I brought along a sound recordist, and even then it became evident that it was too complicated for getting access and for getting around and everything else, and not really necessary, because I'd taken this huge Pro Tools desk, you know, because I was thinking gongs and drums and the whole works and all these microphones, and in the end, one, we were never given the time to set up. We would kneel and explain our intentions, and then once we had the go-ahead, they'd just start talking, so it was just, you know, turn it on and go. And then the second thing, in a recording sense, it was much simpler and a better sound just to have a stereo mic or a single mic, well balanced. And in the end, you know, I had the equipment with me, and I couldn't afford to pay the recordist much anyway, so he was quite happy to go home, I think. And so that also gave us the access. And I mean, one thing I did find difficult with that, of course, to get the access, I was also sort of having to pass these tests and become friends. And so actually the hardest thing was, for me, was to get them to ignore me in the process and to try and, you know, not look at the camera, because I wanted to be invisible in that sense. Once we had access, they kind of really opened up everything to us. So we often felt very comfortable. And the scariest time for me was going to Kim Sok-chul's ceremony, because it was an intensely private moment, and they were grieving for his dead sister, and he was very ill, and all of these things. And I sat outside, you know, peeking through the door, and then at one point Dong-won just took the camera off me and walked into the room and around with the camera and then gave it back. And so that was his way of saying, there you go in, which was really a lovely gesture of him. And I still felt very shy, because when people are mourning and grieving, and, you know, it's very hard to stick a camera in their face. But one interesting thing was, I mean, you saw he spoke to us in the last days of his life, but he spoke to us for hours. And that's such a generous gift at that point in his life. And he then went ahead and played all night till dawn as well. but one thing was we were so conscious that he was unwell and he was talking to us and everything else. And when Dongwon said maybe we should stop, we went yes, yes, and we sort of turned everything off. But when I had it fully translated at home, because he would talk for 20 minutes often and then Dongwon would summarise, became really evident that we were really so welcome and that he just wanted to keep talking. And so that was like that last bit of acceptance came when I was sitting at home going through all of that. I really just showed how open their hearts were to us. And
he actually looked like he was getting rejuvenated as he was interacting with you. That's why it was such a shock.
yes,
And
the lady said,
to get better.
yeah, he actually looked like he was rejuvenated, and especially when he played. I mean, you saw when he played that joy and that.
Well,
We don't have time for any more questions.
that's it. Well, David, you want to say one last word?
I'd just like to thank you for making such a beautiful film. Thank the Jacob Burns Theater for being here and showing this. If you come to see Black Orpheus, you'll see the same thing in Brazil. The most magnificent culture and cultures all encapsulated in a film where the music is so gorgeous and the life, showing the poetic beauty part that's a document. Just as that great part of your film where his granddaughter says, "You're the first Westerner we ever met. You can show this to show the world who he was." That's one of the things that films and symphonies and novels and books and plays and poems and people telling stories and sharing can do. We can document those things of beauty, and no matter how horrible things get, we can have something to make life worth living. So it's wonderful. It's a wonderful evening. I was honored to be here. I thank you for even came by my farm without Amnesty International busting me for torture, and figured out some kind of a program. And he's also a wonderful writer himself and an artist in his own right. And he works for an extraordinary guy named John Hall, who's pretty amazing in these troubled times as well. So I just want to thank all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.